Hey, and welcome back to Wild Mythology. I welcome you to the channel with bread and salt. If you haven't already, don't forget to join this month's giveaway for the book Bullfinch's Mythology. All you have to do is subscribe and make a comment on this video. Plus, don't forget to comment on any other video I make this April. It gives you an extra chance to win. Now, today's video is going to be part 1 of a series where I talk about every single creature and monster from Norse mythology. And for this one, we're starting with 11 awesome creatures. So let's get started. Number 1. Huginn and Muninn. Huginn, meaning thought, and Muninn, meaning memory, are a pair of ravens that fly all over Midgard every day and bring back every piece of information they find back to Odin. They both have the ability to speak, and when they aren't gathering information, can usually be found on Odin's shoulders. Because of their association with Odin, Odin was known as the Raven God, which was one of his many identities. The connection between the ravens and Odin dates back to the 6th century, and they're usually included in any piece of art dealing with Odin. Number 2. The Dwarves. The Dwarves are a mythical race from Norse mythology who are extremely skilled in crafting, mining, and smithing. After Odin and his 2 brothers defeated the first Jotun, Ymir, they used many of his body parts to build Midgard. But after a few days, Ymir's body started to rot, and maggots began to eat the giant's flesh. By doing so, the maggots gained some of Ymir's great power, and began to evolve into the Dwarves, something that Odin and his brothers noticed. So Odin and his brothers gifted them reason, thus creating a great alliance between the gods and the Dwarves. The Dwarves make their home in Niðavekir, one of the 9 realms of the world tree Yggdrasil. Although in some versions of the myths, the home of the Dwarves is Svartalheim, the realm of the Dark Elves. In these versions, it's suggested that there are no Dark Elves and that the Dwarves are pitch black in appearance and turn into stone if exposed to the sun. While modern descriptions of the Dwarves paint them to be short and stout beings, there is no written source that suggests as such. It's completely possible that Dwarves were normal-sized beings, and that the modern description is the result of Christian influence on Norse mythology. Maybe their origins as maggots or the fact they lived in a realm beneath Midgard made them out to be lesser beings. In mythology, the Dwarves are included in many tales, most involving the great treasures of the gods. The Dwarves are responsible for crafting Thor's hammer, Odin's spear, with the chains that tied down the great wolf Fafnir, the golden hair of Sif, and many other impressive treasures. There's also a tale of 4 dwarves who are named after the cardinal directions and are the holders of the sky. Number 3. Fafnir. Fafnir is an important character that shows up in the Volsunga saga. Fafnir is a powerful dwarf who, alongside his 2 brothers, guards his father's house, which is filled with gold and gems. One day, Loki, Odin, and Honir came upon one of Fafnir's brothers, who at the time had transformed into an otter. The 3 killed the otter and showed off its skin at the dwelling of Fafnir's father. Realizing the otter they killed was his brother, Fafnir, his father, and his other brother captured the gods. They then sent Loki to stuff the otter with gold and bring it back in return for the freedom of the other 2 gods. Loki did so, but stuffed the otter with cursed gold and a cursed ring that would bring destruction to whomever possessed it. Fafnir then killed his father, taking all the gold for himself into the wilderness. Eventually, his greed transformed him into a great dragon with poisonous breath. Many years later, Fafnir's second brother fostered a boy named Sigurd. He instructed Sigurd to dig a ditch near Fafnir's cave so that he could sneak up and kill his brother from behind when the dragon went to drink by the stream. The brother then left in fear of being so close to the cave, while Sigurd stayed behind and dug the ditch. Eventually, Fafnir appeared, and with the help of Odin, Sigurd was able to mortally wound the dragon with the legendary sword Garm. Before Fafnir died, he warned Sigurd that his brother would try to kill him. After the dragon died, Sigurd drank some of its blood, which gave him the ability to talk to birds. Hearing from some birds that his foster father was planning to kill him, Sigurd acted first and decapitated the final brother. Number 4. Gullinbursti. After Loki cut off Sif's hair, he went to the dwarves to have them make Sif new locks. But this was Loki we were talking about, and everything he touched had to include some mischief. Loki goaded the dwarf sons of Ivaldi to make 3 treasures for the gods, including golden hair. Loki then goaded the dwarf brothers Brock and Sindri by telling them they couldn't possibly make 3 better treasures than the sons of Ivaldi. The 2 accepted the challenge, but not before making a bet with Loki that his head would be theirs if they won. On the day of judging, the treasures were shown to Odin, Thor, and Freyr. And one of the treasures that Brock and Sindri made was the golden boar Gullinbursti. They gifted it to Freyr, telling the god that the boar could run through air and water better than any horse, and that it illuminated with light that could pierce any darkness. As for Loki and the bet, well, let's just say he wasn't saying much for a while after that day. Number 5. The Draugr. Draugrs are undead zombie-like creatures from Scandinavian folklore. They usually live within their own burial mounds, guarding the treasure they were buried with. A Draugr's body is usually rotted and extremely hideous to look at. They possess superhuman strength and are said to potentially have magical abilities such as shape-shifting, weather manipulation, curse granting, inducing madness, invulnerability to common weapons, and the ability to sink down through the earth. A Draugr can come into existence in 3 different ways. The first is when a body isn't buried horizontally. If the body is buried in an upright or sitting position, then the possibility of it becoming one of the undead is high. The second is when a greedy or horrible human dies and selfishly decides not to move on to the afterlife. They rather become revenants and make the living suffer. The final way for a Draugr to come into existence is through an infectious bite or curse by another Draugr. While difficult because of its undead status, it's possible to defeat a Draugr by sealing it back within its burial mound. As for destroying a Draugr, well, the best way is to cut its head off, burn its body, and then dump the ashes into the sea. Number 6. The Mare. The Mare is a nasty creature from Scandinavian folklore that rides on the chest of their victims while they sleep, causing them terrible nightmares. People who have been traumatized by a mare report that after falling asleep, they felt as if their chest was being pushed down and that the pressure moved all over their body, including their heads. They also noted that they had difficult breathing and that they were unable to make a sound. When they suddenly woke up, they said they were covered in sweat, were extremely fatigued, and some reported finding their hair entangled into mare knots. Legend has it that mares also ride animals in trees. Horses that have been ridden by a mare are found on the brink of death and covered in sweat. Trees are found with branches unnaturally entangled. If a mare is not dealt with and continues to cause nightmares, death is the result for the mare's victims. If a victim suspects they are being terrorized by a mare, it's suggested they fall asleep the next night holding a knife on their chest. When the mare comes to ride on its victim's chest, it will not see the knife and impale itself. Number 7. Trolls. Trolls are creatures from Norse mythology and Scandinavian folklore that have been extremely revisioned over the years. When you think of trolls, strong, ugly, and dim-witted man-eating creatures might come to mind. But in the earliest sources, trolls were beings who lived far away from the rest of society, up in the mountains within caves or rocky areas. They weren't very friendly to outsiders, and they lived in small families together, usually a father with his daughter or a mother with her son. And the most important thing about trolls was that they weren't Christian, which I think had a huge influence on their modern description. Because trolls weren't Christian, and because of their aggressive attitude towards outsiders, this made them dangerous. And at the time, stories and legends would be made as a warning. Trolls were now sometimes small hairy creatures with big noses, a tail, and the ears of a lynx. Or they were giant stone-skinned creatures that ate men and turned into stone when touched by the sun. Either way, the legends grew and the meaning of trolls began to change into what it is today. Nowadays, in popular culture, great examples of trolls can be found in Harry Potter and especially in the works of Tolkien. If you're looking for an older example, one can be found in the amazing epic Beowulf, in the form of the man-eating troll-like creature Grendel. Number 8. The Huldra. A Huldra is a beautiful and seductive forest creature from Scandinavian folklore. All Huldra are stunning blonde women with long golden hair. The only difference between a Huldra and a human woman is that the Huldra have hollowed out backs and a cow tail that they usually try to hide when seducing a man. Usually a Huldra will try to seduce a man and then bring them back deep into the woods. The Huldra will then force the man into marriage. If he disagrees, she kills him. But if he agrees, after they marry, the Huldra will turn into a hideous human with the strength of 10 men. In some stories, though, the Huldra isn't interested in seducing a man she comes upon in the forest. As long as the man is kind to her, the Huldra will offer him a reward and then move along. When they're not seducing men, Huldra are taking care of the forests they inhabit as a guardian. Number 9. Heidrun. Heidrun is a goat that stands on the top of Valhalla and feasts on the leaves of the tree Leiraf, which is thought to be another name for the great world tree Yggdrasil. Every day as Heidrun feasts on the leaves, her udders produce mead which collects in a giant pot beneath her. This mead is for the Einherjar, the warriors that have died in battle and are brought to Valhalla by the Valkyries so that someday they can fight for the gods during Ragnarok. The amount of mead the goat produces is large enough to allow every Einherjar to drink their fill every day. Number 10. Garm. Garm is the hellhound of the dead and the guardian of the gates of hell. Unfortunately, not a lot of sources survived about Garm, but what we do know is that he is the greatest of his kind, which perhaps suggests he is the leader of the hellhounds. We also know that at one point Garm was chained within a cave in hell, and that one of the beginning signs of Ragnarok is when he breaks free from those chains. We also know that on the field of battle during Ragnarok, he will face the one-handed god Tyr, resulting in both slaying each other. Because of their similarities, it's been suggested that perhaps Garm and the great wolf Fafnir are the same being. They both are chained and break free of those chains at the beginning of Ragnarok. Also, the fact that Tyr got his hand bitten off while he chained Fafnir give both reasons to fight during Ragnarok. So there are many similarities, or perhaps they're just two different canines with bad luck when it comes to chains. Number 11. Audumbla. Audumbla is the primordial cow that appeared from Ginnungagap. While she is only mentioned at the beginning of Norse mythology, Audumbla played a very important role. On the ice realm of Niflheim, while Ymir drank milk from Audumla's udders, Audumbla was nourishing herself by licking the salt from the ice. After the first day of continuous licking, some hair could be found popping out of the ice. After the second day of licking, a whole head was revealed. And after the third day, Audumbla licked free a whole man. This man was Buri, the grandfather of Odin. And there it is, I give you the creatures of Norse mythology. Don't forget to subscribe and comment so you can join the giveaway. And I'll see you here next time on Wild Mythology.